If you come across this animal while hiking the Rockies, you'll soon realize that it's not a squirrel, although the marmot is still considered a squirrel. To explain more, we have Dr. Doug Whiteside, who's the senior staff vet at the Calgary Zoo. Good morning.
Morning.
How long have you been with the zoo?
A little over 13 years.
13?
Yeah.
Man, and you're loving every moment.
Every moment.
You love the people, love the studying, love everything about this.
Everything about it, yeah.
Because we love the zoo.
Yeah.
Did you have anything to do with the zoo lights?
I just get to go see them.
You didn't have to put any bulbs or anything,
no,
did you?
No. We have a great crew that puts the zoo lights up for us each year. So.
Critically endangered species scare us. When we hear that there's an animal that is on this list, that's frightening. And you're finding one with the Vancouver Island Marmot, but the marmot is also something that we've seen here in Alberta. First of all, how did the marmot, this Vancouver Island Marmot, come on this list?
Yeah, so I mean, they're not quite sure how they became endangered. What we do know is that starting in the 1980s, we saw a slight increase in population.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, on BC. They're only found on BC. They're one of 14 marmot species in the world, but they're only found on the island of Victoria. Vancouver Island, sorry. And what happened there was that logging really picked up in the 1980s and actually created some more subalpine meadows for these marmots. And so that allowed the population to actually increase. But then after that, it started to contract rapidly as those alpine meadows filled back in again. Predation is the biggest thing that kills marmots. About 80% of marmots die from predation, either from...
Sorry, predation is?
Predation, so getting killed off by golden eagles, by cougars, and by wolves. And
predators, yeah.
Predators,
right.
Basically. And, you know, we know that predator populations have actually increased on Vancouver Island in the past 2 decades as well.
So the marmot is only exclusive to the West Coast for the most part? Why would we think that we've seen some here in Alberta?
Well, we do see yellow-bellied marmots here in Alberta.
Yellow-bellied?
Yeah, exactly,
okay.
Yes. And then there's the hoary marmots, which are found in BC, and then the Olympic marmots, which are also very closely related to the Vancouver Island Marmot. They're actually found on the Olympic Peninsula of Washington State.
Okay.
But yeah, Vancouver Island marmots are found strictly on Vancouver Island.
So what have we learned about the marmot, and better yet, why is the doctor from the Calgary Zoo studying this?
Okay, so as you mentioned before, marmots are critically endangered. Their populations dropped to less than 70 individuals in the wild. We got
70?
70.
That's it?
That's it. We actually got down to a point where we only had 20 breeding females left in the wild. And so at that point in time, in 1997, it was decided with the BC government and the Marmot Recovery Foundation that something needed to be done. And so they approached the Toronto Zoo and the Calgary Zoo to start to see whether a captive breeding program could be established to breed marmots in captivity, then to be able to return them back to the wild. And so Calgary Zoo received their first marmots in 1998 from the wild, and we actually were the first zoo to produce marmot pups in 2000.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and so since 2000, that's when marmots started producing in captivity. There's been about 550 marmots that have actually been born in captivity.
In captivity.
And
are they being released to the wild?
They are. So
okay.
There's been about 453 releases back to the wild now. So about 75% of those marmots that were born in captivity have been released back to the wild, and the rest have been held back to maintain a genetic population. And the Calgary Zoo has produced about 128 of those pups. So about 25% of the pups that have been produced in the Calgary Zoo has been responsible.
So great
for.
news.
So great news on that front, yes.
Are you trying to put them in different areas of the country to see if they would actually survive, rather than just staying on the West Coast?
No, so they're actually being put just back on Vancouver Island because that's what their natural range is. You know, and as I said before, hoary marmots are actually found in the interior of BC, so you don't want to be competing with those guys there. But they have expanded out the range.
Really, a turf war?
Yeah, exactly. Turf war, exactly. Squirrel turf war.
Yes.
All teeth.
We
right,
don't want that. Yeah. All teeth.
But you know, so right now there are 4 major populations in BC. So there's the Nanaimo Lakes population. We have a Forbidden Plateau population, which includes Mount Washington. Where you tend to see it on the ski slope there. You'll see the marmots there in the summertime, and then they have the Strathcona population, and then 2 experimental sites. They're trying up in the northern part of Vancouver Island now to release them. So the populations now, you know, we went from only 20 females in the wild. We now have a population that sits between 215 and 277 marmots now.
So we're going in the right direction.
Going in the right direction.
But how will you know when you're successful, though? I mean, it sounds successful because you've increased it by 3, 4, 400 times. But what's the measure for you right now?
Yeah, and that's a difficult thing to look at right now. You know, our the Marmot Recovery Foundation was hoping that, you know, we would have 500 marmots out there as a population. You know, and we tend to see variation in terms of reproduction. You know, in the wild, the female marmots will usually produce pups every 2 years, and they do 3 to 4 pups at a time.
That's not very many.
It's not very many. You know, in 2012 and 2013, we had very good years where we were producing anywhere from 70 to 75 pups being born in the wild.
Right.
This past year, it's been much lower. You know, so only about 25 pups that were produced this year. And the problem is that, you know, when mortality in the wild exceeds the production rate, you know, and that's what we had this past year. We had 41 marmots that were lost in the wild, mostly to predation. So it's a very fragile population still, you know, and it's something that you know, we still need to continue, you know, breeding and being able to supplement that wild population.
And that's where you and the Calgary Zoo come in.
Exactly.
Let's make this thing work. And so far, it sounds like you are making it work. Congratulations.
Thanks very much.
This is great stuff. An update from the Calgary Zoo. Dr. Doug Whiteside, Senior Staff Vet at the Calgary Zoo. Oh, and by the way, Zoo Lights continues. How much do you know about the Zoo Lights?
A little bit, yes.
It continues for at least till, I think, the 31st?
No, actually, it continues usually the first week in January. Yeah, that first
There you go. And if you see Dr. Whiteside, just say hey and say, hey, yeah, I saw that marmot thing.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome.
This.
Thanks.
A lot of other things are happening in and around our city, including Sleeping Beauty. Oh, check this out. Gooder Pink Productions is presenting Sleeping Beauty at the Rotary Performing Arts Center in Okotoks. It is so much fun. It continues now through Sunday. And if you'd like tickets and more information, just go to goodgurpinkproductions.com. This is Trending on Shaw.